When I think about ambition, I think about controlling ambition and how important it is to understand the difference between what I call chaotic ambition and true ambition. And one of the ways to do this is to really become aware of the things that we desire. And if we don't actually think about, what are all of the things that I perhaps want to buy, right, for example, then no amount of money will be enough. And for everybody, that line is different, and that's fine. But one of the questions that I love asking people is I try to get them to dream the biggest possible dream possible, which is, if you had unlimited amounts of money, if you had Bezos level wealth, what would you do differently? What would you buy? Because what's very interesting about this is nobody says yachts, nobody says private jets, nobody says anything that you would think that they say. Inevitably, what happens here is somebody will actually say something that's within their means today. If we're given an opportunity to dream as big as we can possibly dream, most people actually, I found, bring up something that they have access to today, or that they could have access to if they perhaps stopped spending money on things that weren't as meaningful to them and opened up some free funds. Couple examples to this. When my wife and I asked this question to each other, we were walking down the street one day and I asked this to her and she asked the same thing to me, and we actually both came to the same. We said, if we had an unlimited amount of money, what would we do? And we would spend more money really on like preventative health, things like executive physicals, maybe blood tests. We live in Canada, so we have free healthcare, but a lot of the healthcare in Canada is very much reactive, and it's making sure when you get sick, you get better enough that, you can go home. What's the best way to say it? The healthcare in Canada is like, if you have a house that has a leak, they're just gonna like redo your wall, but they're not gonna fix the leak. And then you come in and there's a leak again and they're just going to like fix the wall again, right? They're kind of just making sure that you get out of pain or sickness, not that you avoid it in the first place. It is certainly not an optimization exercise. And so what Allison and I came to when we said, if we had unlimited amounts of wealth, what would we do? We would look at our own health as an optimization exercise, not like a biohacker, bro. I'm not wearing an Oura ring or a tracking watch. I don't care about any of that. I'm certainly not wearing like blue blocker sunglasses at night, as cool as those look, bros. But what I'm doing is, hey, a little bit more self-care, more consistent massage / body work type stuff. Okay, well, can I do executive physicals or scans perhaps to catch cancer before they become a problem? That happened with us. Allison caught her thyroid cancer very, very early. And because of that, it wasn't that big of a problem. She had surgery, she had half of her thyroid out, and by all accounts, she's better. But we know now that her body has the ability to grow cancer in it, which means, nobody is ever, quote unquote, cured from cancer. And we all have cancer cells in our body. And so that's always kind of hanging over our head. So this idea of, if you're Bezos level wealth, what it does is it illuminates for you things that probably are already in your control, that are meaningful for you, that you can already afford. When I asked somebody who I work with, for example, this question, what came up, so she is a single mother and she has a child who's far along the autism spectrum, her only child. And where she lives in the southern United States, there are not the opportunities for school that she would like there to be for her son. She just doesn't feel like the school system, public or private, optimally help her son. And so when I asked her this question, she said, I would really love to be able to self-fund a small school for my son Nate and then other kids like him that live close. And so she can't afford that yet. But as a business owner, and this is somebody who works with me, that has become a motivation together. And so instead of her now being an employee with a salary, I said, hey, how about you take over this big project? How about you take this on as yours? And I want to give you a percentage when it sells. And here's some numbers and some calculations. We spoke about what it might cost for her to do this school, right? And I said, this is going to be enough money for you to build that school for your son when this sells. For her, she's got that extreme motivation now. For me as a business owner, I know what motivates her more than anything else. She's cranking on this project. She's doing a phenomenal job. And this thing has grown way faster than it ever grew with me at the helm. With her knowing that, hey, this is going to help me achieve my dream. And so I love this question because it allows us to dream. And when that happens, as somebody who has other people working for him, I know what really motivates you now. And I can design incentives, perhaps, that really align with that. And that's great for everybody. Or it helps people see what's already within their grasp to make their life better and eliminates all of these kind of worries and incessant worries around them. And say, hey, maybe I should get a massage every week. Maybe I should figure out a way to do some extra blood work. Not just make sure that I'm not sick, but can I do things to make sure I don't get sick, or I perform at the highest level, or I rest better? A lot of my stuff often has to do with sleep and improving sleep, because we spend so much time in bed and yet we don't optimize our sleep environments, which I think is silly. I love this question. It's a question that if you have somebody that you love, a spouse, a partner, it's worth sitting down tonight and asking them that question. If you had unlimited amounts of money, let's dream a little bit. Let's sit down and dream and think, what would you buy? Would you do different than what we're doing today? And a lot of times what's going to come out of it is you're just going to look at one another and you're just say, well, shit, let's do that tomorrow, man. It's pretty cool.